Can you actually believe that it's been 5 whole years since the first high-grade Bloode Orphans kit came out? Same goes for the anime. I cannot believe that was 5 years ago. Still to this day, the high-grade line of Bloode Orphans kits is my favorite line of high-grade kits. These of course are by no means perfect, but I feel their pros completely outweigh the cons. The only cons with these kits I find is the fact that they can be quite loose out of the box, and sometimes kits are looser than other kits for no real apparent reason, even if they're the exact same kit. But I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. As you can see, I've got a whole bunch of different Bloode Orphans high-grade kits knocking around the background here. These I got to actually make a custom Mecha Gaikotsu Gundam frame, and of course I will be using the Dantalion as the basis for it. Like I mentioned so many years ago. I'm finally going to get around to that. That's not going to be this month because December is a busy month and I've got a massive backlog to get through. But that will be coming. I know the parts I'm going to harvest from these for making that custom, but as for the leftover parts, I do want to make some random customs based on you guys' selections. For example, what arms you want to see with what torsos, with what legs and what weapons. That I would love to hear. As for what I've got the standard Kimaris, of course Dantalion, the Helmvig Reinkar, Astaroth Origin, Kimaris Vidar, Hajiroboshi, and of course this as well, which is the Barbatos Lupus. I already know which particular parts I'm going to harvest from each of these, and some parts from the Flauros that I'm going to use to make the custom, but I would love to know if you were to use these particular kits to build a custom Gundam frame of your own, what would you use and what would you call it? Because like I mentioned already, once I'm done with the parts I'm taking, I'd love some awesome ideas for other customs that you guys might want to see. But as for today, what I'm going to be taking a look at is the one back here, come on, that I did not mention. And this is one of my all-time favorite high-grade Bloode Orphans kits, and this is what we're going to take a look at today, as well as some other kits while I talk about, do these kits hold up after 5 years? This, of course, is the Grey's Kai. So just to get this all started off, here is a pair of kits that I just freshly built. Once again, this is the high-grade Barbatos Lupus and the high-grade Gundam Dantalion. So I put these together just out of preparation for the custom build that I want to make, but I still have the ones knocking around from way back when. That is the Lupus, and there is my older Dantalion. So considering what these two have been through, they actually held up quite well. These were shipped from Japan in a big old box, by freight, which is by sea in a big old ship, and well, technically the box was beaten to bits and full of holes when I got it, so I'm surprised they actually made it and didn't fall out of the box. There are some parts missing here and there, especially on Dantalion, and they've definitely loosened up quite a bit since I originally built them. For example, the new builds are solid as a rock, but as these kits are known to, they do loosen up over time. Here is the first one I ever built, the original Barbatos from, well, you can kind of see where this is going. The original high-grade Barbatos from 5 whole years ago. So yeah, once again, time has not necessarily been kind to a lot of these Bloode Orphans kits that I have. Once again, they have been through quite a lot on top of that. So I mean, all things considering, they could be a lot worse. I built some of these fresh that were a little bit on the loose side. So I think the polycaps and some of the design, especially inside here, this part inside of the chest, is notorious for coming loose. Same with the waist. So this guy likes to fall down a lot on me. And to be blatantly obvious, there's 2 shelves in my office that I loathe going near, and that is the shelf that has the high-grade Bloode Orphans kits on it, and the shelf that has the early real grades on it, because they're notorious for falling over. Real grade Destiny, real grade Strike Freedom, real grade Strike, they're so back heavy they always fall. You're better off putting them in aerial poses, but I'm weird and kind of like them just standing there. And the same goes for the high-grade Bloode Orphans kits. Just nudge the shelf at all, or should I say bookcase, and they fall down like dominoes every time. So if you are going to build yourself some of these, I recommend cementing a lot of the parts and thickening a lot of the joints as you go along to save those headaches in the future. But anyway, there he goes again. I mean, seriously, I'm not even doing that on purpose. That's just, yeah, those feet, stay in tune what they need to. But yeah, let's take a bit of a trip down memory lane with this badass custom Greys back here by giving it a quick build. So first up, this does have the blue Bandai logo on it, so that does mean it was released somewhat recently, at least this reissue that is. These boxes are still pre-English translation, so you need to get your Japanese on or just look at the nice pictures. Flipping that around to the other side, and once again, more pictures, more Japanese. Now let's bust it open. As usual, bottom first because that's where the manual is. A fairly small manual here because these are incredibly simple and fast to build. As you can tell by the 1, 2, 3 bags of runners, and I think Barbie itself only's got the 2. Oh, there seems to be a little card in here from the shop I bought it from. Oh, that's a pretty nice touch. One thing that has always blown my mind about these particular high grades is how they make such awesome little kits with essentially the minimal amount of parts. It's got a full inner frame, some armor for on top of it. And still to this day, it's such a nice, simple, yet outstanding little build every single time. But anyway, that is enough about the plastic. Let's build this guy a twin. For me, the Greys custom is my favorite of all the different variants of the Greys, Regging Lasers, etc. The reason for this is because it takes a lot of the standard cool grunt elements of the Greys, but removes a lot of the sci-fi alien looking elements like the flaps around back for thrusters and the super rounded head, and replaces it with more low-tech looking solutions like that big square head and that massive straight up booster on the back. Of course, it goes without saying I do love the Ryusei Go, but the hot pink doesn't really give that militaristic grunt vibe like this right here does. Once again, to this day, still my favorite Greys. So anyway, speaking of Greys, there is the Greys custom again. There is the Greys custom I built many a year ago, and finally, there is a standard Greys with some extra added parts from some of the option sets. Once again, this is a really, really cool Gundam grunt that, well, doesn't really look like a Gundam grunt at all. But to jump back into that original question I asked at the beginning of this video, and that is, do these kits still hold up? And the answer is yes and no. The 3 fresh builds that I've made recently, which is this, the Lupus and the Dantalion, are all as solid as a rock. I mean, I can shake this one and its legs won't even bend. It moved a slight bit, but this is tight everywhere. Nothing is even given the indication of falling apart. However, if I grab either of the older Greyses, they immediately just drop like this. I don't recall if they were actually like this straight out of the box. I think they were a little loose, not crazy loose. I think the same goes for this Greys here. If I grab that leg and let go, yeah, whoop, gone. And I will mention, I did disassemble and reassemble the legs on this particular Greys custom to make sure they were assembled properly and hadn't just loosened up, and still, it has those issues. So I don't know if Bandai has done something to tighten up newer releases, or if it's just a case of they do age quite a bit over time. But this is the new Lupus, and it is a little bit loose in parts, not too bad. Of course, the terrible design of the big old mace sword here that just slides right out of the hand all the time. That makes no sense at all. Round peg, square hole. But for me, I find, and this is my older Lupus right here, I had no problems with this at all except inside the chest I needed to tighten up. But besides that, it gave me no woes whatsoever. So once again, if you've got some of these kits, whether they're new or old, how are they holding up? Drop it in the comments. So moving right on into the accessories, and here is the high grade Greys custom with all that it comes with. So this isn't a whole lot, it's just that rifle and the axe. One thing I absolutely adore about Bloode Orphans kits is the fact that all of their weapons are very unusual when it comes to... get in there! They're very unusual when it comes to Gundam model kits because they're all physical weapons, axes, and bullet shooting weapons that I adore. Beam weapons are awesome, but it's nice to have some variation. So first up in here we have the rifle. This is pretty cool. It's made out of a whole bunch of parts and attaches to the Greys really well. I love the design of this, but I'm always kind of confused as to where the ammo comes from. We've got a handle up front, these kind of shield-ish sections for around the side. Maybe there's ammo in those. They look a little bit skinny for that. And then there's this segment here on the bottom, which attaches it into the arms, and once again, looks a bit skinny for ammo. However, that does look like where the magazine would go. I absolutely adore the way this weapon attaches. It goes on like this, the two side segments attach, and then the lower segment locks that onto the arm for an ironclad hold. That's going nowhere. The battle axe is quite basic, it's all one piece, attaches into the arm like so, looks pretty cool, and when it's not in use you can see the pegs on the side there and they just attach onto the side skirting armor like that. There is also option kits available which have some very Grays specific parts, like these cool thrusters there and this big old shoulder cannon right here. The compatibility between Iron Blooded Orphans kits is off the charts, and these little option kits really add to the mix. I find the Grays is an awesome army builder, and these sort of elements allow you to customize your individual units, which I love. So that makes the kit bashable nature of these particular kits pretty much unprecedented. There's so many awesome kits out there, they all fit together pretty much 100% perfectly. Well, ignoring some of the more unusual kits that don't kind of match, but for the most part, everything fits together and looks awesome most of the time. If you've always been considering an easy way to design your own custom mecha, you cannot go wrong with this line whatsoever. So now moving on to the build and the articulation, and like I've mentioned already, this line in general does have a little bit of an issue with just, well, holding together and not getting loose. Once again, right out of the box, this Grays right here is as solid as a rock, but the ones I've had from before are a little bit looser, and when it comes to the more bigger, crazier designs like Gundam Marchosius, which we would have seen on here not that long ago, well, that one is a little too big for the frame that's trying to hold it together. Of course, this does not make these kits lost causes by any margin, and just simple fixes like popping some super glue in the joints, wait for it to dry of course, top coating the kit before assembling it, or just painting the kit will tighten it up. But just keep it in mind if you are grabbing some of these kits, they may need a little bit of extra love. But yeah, when it comes to the articulation on the Grays, right here, the Grays Custom or the standard Grays over there, it is a little bit on the limited side. So all the polycaps on here are the exact same polycaps we see on most high grade, so that does mean compatibility once again, but also it does mean you're seeing the same sort of thing you see with all of these kits. The neck is the same, double jointed, giggity, giggity, giggity goo, but it doesn't do anything. So you could somewhat say that the design of these is a little bit on the overcomplicated side, so it kind of gets in the way of some movement. Some things are fine. This has an absolutely awesome ab crunch, which is really cool. The neck, like you just saw, extremely limited. Up inside the shoulder here, we've got the polycap aligned up and down, and it's out quite far from the mobile suit, so it does mean you get a lot out of that. The shoulder armor is separate to the arm. There's the arm all the way down, all the way up, full rotation inside of that ball and socket shoulder, full rotation here at the upper arm, a single point bend, but not too bad right there for that elbow, standard ball joint wrist right here. The front skirting armor can just rotate, so just up and down like so. Side skirting is on the standard polycap, so that does mean it can rotate to the back, to the front, lift up and down ever so slightly, but we do have a bit of a mechanism inside on the waist there that gives you a little bit more, but these are still always pretty much in the way. Paralyzed butt flap. The hips are fixed in here, so there is no dropping or moving mechanism, which does limit those Grays kicks to that, which is a little pathetic, that, which is even worse. You can probably no, that's all you're getting out of that. And there is its best attempt at the splits. As for the rotation at the upper leg, it's just from there to there, so not the full spin. Next up then is the bend at the knee, so 1-2 point bend, but still it's okay. We got some nice separating parts in there. That knee moves with the inner part, which is very nice. This bit of armor is on a ball joint, you don't really get much out of that. The ankle also on a ball joint, you don't really get much out of that either. And then on the ground, here's what we get to the front. That's not great. To the back, that's terrible. And then the side to side pivot is actually pretty okay. We've got another joint in there I missed. That being this upper one that does that to that. Its big old thruster can move up and down like so. And a ball joint for the vernier there on the end. So yeah, when it comes to the Grays, the articulation is not its strongest aspect whatsoever. It's basic, well, saying it's basic is a bit of a compliment. I would say it's actually a little below basic. You can always try and justify that by saying it is a grunt suit, so it never would be doing any kind of crazy acrobatics or anything like that, but it is always nice to have a little bit extra there to play around with, so it could be a whole lot better. So anyway, that right there is it for that bit of a reminiscence video as well as a bit of a review, and getting back to the question I posed right at the beginning, and that is, do the high-grade Iron-Blooded Orphans kits still hold up in 2020? And I say 100% yes. There are no kits quite like these. They're high grade with a full inner frame. Pretty much the entire line is 100% compatible with each other, so kit bashes right out of the box. But when it comes to building the kits as they come, there is a lot of issues sometimes with stickers, and the main offender would be the loose parts. So once again, if you top coat joints, bring a little bit of paint, then these will treat you very, very well, especially if you want a kit bash. So on top of that, I'm also going to give this kit a ranking. As for the Greys and the Greys Custom, I rank them exactly the same, and honestly, I'm fighting myself not to give them a gold tier ranking. I'm fighting, I'm losing, I've lost, it's gold tier. What can I say? This is an army builder Zaku style kit with a full inner frame, some pretty cool non-beam weaponry, and every single thing in this line is compatible with them for the most part. Buy some option kits, buy a bunch of these Greys kits, slap them together, and you've got yourself a bunch of heavily customized different grunts, and that is so cool. Sure, when it comes to an army builder kit, this isn't quite as good as the high-grade The Origin Zaku, but that kit is a lot more expensive, takes a lot longer to build, and doesn't have the same out-of-box kit bashability as these. However, I would say these are better than the Leo. The Leo is an okay kit, but just not the same level of awesome as these guys right here are. So gold tier, if you don't have one, get 10. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more reviews. Do you think that the high-grade Iron-Blooded Orphans kits still hold up in 2020? Drop that down in the comments, and of course, I will see you next time.